I'll let you know.
Right. Should I crack open a beer? Are you drinking? Is that part of this podcast?
Yeah, that's how we should open. Should we crack open a beer? You're welcome to drink anytime you want. You're of drinking age. Anyway, I guess that's a good inauspicious way to open. But here we are without, I would say, further ado, the first podcast of the season, a couple weeks late.
Well,
It's just how that goes. Life happens. But anyway, we're going to open the season with someone who I don't think's been on the pod in at least 2 years, maybe longer than that. Probably hasn't even stepped foot in the United States in a couple of years. So I guess you might as well introduce yourself because people probably don't even know who
sure.
you
Well,
are
well,
anymore.
I'm happy to. Well, first off, let me just say Scoozy, which happens to be the name of my beer, for missing the first 20 seconds and the last 10 years of American life. But yeah, long time listener, first time I think appearance actually probably on the pod. But happy to be here. For those of you who don't remember me, my name is Evan. My franchise used to have some success, fallen on lean years last three or four. This year will certainly be a continuation of that, but at least now I can watch my team lose in real time instead of waking up to it the following morning. So yeah, happy to be back, uh, and obviously be on such a prestigious program.
Oh, there we go. Well, don't get too drunk now. This is out there in the public. You're not. I guess what do we? I guess if you want to update folks, you can. Um,
I
you're
will
back
not
in the United
tell
States. I don't know
you.
if you want to disclose any additional information, location, job title.
So
That's up
the
to you. We
job
have
title
people.
will leave mysterious for those long listeners of the podcast. I have returned to American soil. Uh, it has welcomed me. Maybe I don't know about open arms, but it has welcomed me back. I'm here temporarily. How long that temporary stay lasts is still unknown. Could be a few months. Could be more like a year. But I'm at least here till the end of the year. Certainly through the regular season and for fantasy football, that lines up well. I would love to say that I came back solely so that I could be a more hands-on owner of my franchise. That would be a lie, but I am here, and I will do my best Stan Kroenke impression.
Hey,
So
Stan Kroenke went. He at least tries to have moderate success. I don't know. Your team's had moderate success in a while, so at least the Kroenke teams have
if
delivered
Gates' wedding
championships
had not
recently.
ruined my opportunity, we would have done a London draft. And yes, Tates, I'm still bitter. 5 years and counting.
Again, as you've been informed many times, you have to take it up with him. It's not for the league or the commissioner to involve themselves in. And frankly, yeah, take it up with Tate. I'm sure Sabrina would love to give you their wedding anniversary weekend, for you to do whatever you want with. I'm sure she has no problem with that. Um, but so we don't have to divulge your government secrets. We have other members of the government who refuse to allow us to disclose their job title or locations at times, which don't know that that's necessarily necessary, but to each their own. Um,
This is a public forum. I have to have a certain amount of discretion.
sure. Now that you are here and you're able to watch football in an actual time zone, what has struck you? There's new rules this year. We got new kickoffs.
The
They didn't
kickoff
call
is
pass
terrible.
interference against the Chiefs. Anything that you weren't aware of that's now struck you a little bit?
I mean, wow, there's so much to unpack there. First off, the new kickoff is just terrible. Like at some point, just don't kick the ball anymore. I mean, I'm seeing, with the exception of very few teams in the league, everything is basically a touchback. Very few teams are actively forcing people to run, and when they do that, it's actually been successful. I mean, no one's really returning the kickoff, that successfully, but no one is just doing it. So I think the new kickoff is boring. The fact that you have to declare an onside kick, I think, is un-American. I will go so far as to say that I'm shocked it's not on any presidential political manifestos to force them to remove that. I just dislike that aspect of the game. We can obviously talk about the Chiefs. You know, they've gotten 3 wins. Well, 1.5 is certainly questionable. I mean, pass interference. that doesn't even need to be discussed. It's an outrageous no call. Obviously, Baltimore wants to believe that that toe wasn't on the line. Certainly, all wide receivers, anyone catching the football needs to be wearing white cleats, nothing but white cleats. Because if you want to be able to have plausible deniability of your foot on the line, that shoe better be white. If I was an equipment manager in the league, every skill position player is getting white cleats, no choice. I'm going to put like front offices should put that in contracts because this is what we're seeing. I'm still bitter about what happened to the Niners on Sunday. I mean, Shanahan's play calling, Ronnie Bell not knowing how to catch the ball. This, you know, that has been a disappointing, I think, return to me. I was able to watch the Monday Night Football win. That was
All right, okay, rant over. My God, you know, take a breath. Number one. Number two, this isn't your pulpit to just say whatever unhinged thoughts you have about the NFL. Clearly, the Chiefs get all the calls. Nobody needs to state the obvious there. And I'm not going to have a 2 minute rant about it. Look, I guess here's what I take from all that. You get to watch football again, and wow, you've got hot takes like Nick Wright, on FS1. So good to see that you're back and engaged. I think it's a welcome presence for the league. You're here for a short time, perhaps. Make the most of it. Now, from real football to fake football, how's fantasy going? How do you like your team? Oh yeah, we should probably unmute you, but I'm afraid we're going to get another 4 minute rant. So, how do you like your squad?
I mean, my
Unmute.
squad, as everyone knows, was not, picked by me this season, and it's pretty trash. I only have myself to blame for that because I did not do a great job in giving draft instructions. Um, so no, my squad is solidly lower third of the league. It's got some heart, it's got some grit. At least everyone has a contract now. We're dangerously close to the season without that being resolved. But no, I'm not particularly thrilled with my team. I do believe that my franchise will, towards the end of the season, start to have probably some pieces that could be interesting in trade scenarios. I have some young rookies, could be interesting for people that got picked up in late rounds. There could be some interest in people picking up some of them. You know, uh, if they develop
I
during the
mean,
course of the year. I mean, obviously, my team has one strength, and that's at running back. Uh, Clearly, I got two absolute studs in the backfield, and the rest of them. I mean, I don't want to be hard. Like Aubrey's doing an okay job as a kicker, but the rest of them are being pretty subpar. So
look, let's be realistic here. First of all, you don't even have a full bench. Number two, you asked for Keon Coleman in like this eighth round or something. He's caught basically one pass, happened to be a
or a
touchdown and a
touchdown
blowout.
happened to be a touchdown. Let's not
Happened to
sell
be a
that
touchdown.
short. He got in
That's
the end zone, which is more than Brandon Ayuk. Okay, which cost me my parlay, which is what I really want to talk about. Like my
all
team
right.
is
All right. You've been in this country for a few weeks. You already figured out how to use the bet app. Great. It's good for you. Hopefully you're not there till 6, 7 in the morning, like watching the National baseball players. But look, yeah, your team is a stinking, flaming pile of dog doo doo at the moment. Could it get better? Sure. Is it going to? Probably not. You've got three running backs on this roster, one of whom sucks, one of who's underperforming, and yeah, Brees Hall's pretty good. After that, I don't know what you got here. Ayuk, yeah, clearly holding out was a bad idea. George Pickens has a running back trying to throw the ball. That's not going to work out. Keon Coleman can't separate and is like the sixth option, when you can only have five pass catchers on the field at a time. So solid roster construction. Again, we followed your instructions to a T with group debate and agreement on your picks. So, I would agree. You have only yourself to blame. At the end of the day, look, I wish you the best of luck. I think, yeah, if you hold on to some guys, sure. I did see a statistic. Brandon Aubrey is something like wide receiver 4 if you were a receiver based on number of points he has so far this year. So, yeah, it's fantasy football. Anything can happen. You're not Paul. Your team actually knows how to score points. So, look, it's not all bad. Um, and you never know. That's the kind of the beauty of how it goes.
Look, I think look, there are many people that are going to come on this pod this season or have come on the pod in past seasons and have sugarcoated uh, some pretty terrible fantasy football teams. At least I'm being honest and I'm giving an accurate reflection of the mediocrity before us as we look at my roster. What I would say in its defense is that after 3 weeks of the season, when my team has not performed well, and it's big players, it's two big players really besides Brees Hall have underperformed, which are Ayuk and Robinson. I'm still 1-3, and there are still three teams in the league that have scored less than me. So while I am bad, there is worse out there. And I think realistically that we need to have that perspective because I think my team can improve. Is it a playoff team? No, it's absolutely not. Could it win the consolation bracket? Maybe. And I think, as a Stan Kroenke franchise, you're kind of satisfied with that.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to know that you think you've played 4 weeks of fantasy when you've
I
only
said
played
3 weeks. I
three.
said through
So
3 weeks of the
you
season. There
you
are
then said you were 1-3, which would imply 4 weeks. So
one and
maybe
two.
you're drunk, maybe you can't do math. Either way, I wouldn't trust you with the nuclear codes. I think it's fair. I think you bring up a good point. Look, you're scoring 92 points a week. I mean, that's just such an impressive number. Manny only scores 90. Wow, you guys are killing it. Wagner, 86. I mean, that's, not to dive into that team, which has really gone off to a slow start. And I don't even know if we can call what Paul has fielded as a team. It's almost like an affront to the concept of fantasy football. 64 points. I mean, I don't even know how you do that intentionally. Um, I don't even know. And I look at that team and I don't see anything redeemable there. So I'm excited for the Paul trades to start happening here, any moment. Um, Look, you're right, though. It is early. You never know. I think there's a very clear bottom four and maybe bottom five. I think Tate's is a fake 3-0. That's a suspect record. But here you're in that division. That division's kind of a joke. It's pretty weak. And I think, we've got easily four teams we know are going to be in the playoffs, and we've got everybody else trying to figure out where they stack up. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. We haven't seen any trades yet. We'll see. It would be nice to see some start, but it's very early. We've seen some big waiver wire spends. Paul spent $102 on Jawan Jennings. Sure. I mean, once Debo's back, I don't see, and Kittle's back, I don't see how that works out. But hey, you can't take it home with you. You might as well spend the money. So yeah, I mean, look, it's fantasy football. Things happen. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You've got Bijan, you've got Brees Hall. I'm happy to give you Jordan Mason for a price. So, I'll give you a niner or two if it'll make you happy. You all wear niner colors, by the way.
I mean, I'll take a pass on that. Thank you. Yeah, look, I think as I said, I've been pretty honest and open about the you know subpar season that my franchise is going to enter in. That being said, it's not the worst in the league, which we take some solace in, here in this franchise. And I think we're realistically at the floor. I mean, Pickens at some point, Pittsburgh is going to have to throw the ball. Ayuk will have to catch a pass, and Robinson also has to get in the end zone. And I still have a win, uh, which is better than a few other teams in the league. And one of my losses wasn't
Yeah.
that, was relatively close.
Look, I'm not saying your team is the worst. I certainly don't think that. Like I said, I think there's a group of four that are certainly seem to be like they're going to be struggling in terms of overall, performance. That's okay. That doesn't mean that that's what happens, right? Injuries happen, bye weeks happen. It's fantasy. Anybody can go off. We'll see if Russell Wilson comes back. He supplants Justin Fields, and that helps George Pickens. I don't know. Mike Tomlin, he loves defense and running the football. So who's to say? And they got Arthur
That's
Smith
fine.
at offensive coordinator, which I think is the biggest concern there. Is that's a guy who didn't know how to use Drake London and Kyle Pitts. So you know, I think that would give me the biggest pause. But you never know. I think your division is certainly up for grabs. I don't think there's one overly dominant team. Jacobs has got a tough situation this week with some injuries. He's got a couple key players on bye next week. All of a sudden, in 2 weeks' time, you could look up and if you steal a couple wins, I don't know who you play, but you never know. We'll see.
I
We'll
mean,
see. It should be interesting.
as I said,
On the flip side,
my team is preparing for the consolation bracket, or interesting midseason trades. You know, I mean, as everyone, I think most people know, my franchise has floated with, you know, selling itself. As an owner that's been absentee, I've floated with the concept of selling the franchise in recent seasons, and I could just go for broke. Mortgage the future, sell a depreciating asset. Or vice versa, try to increase the price of my franchise by selling all of its assets this season.
well, but
We'll
in your decade of team ownership, with all of the new media deals that the league has experienced, how much has your team value grown by?
I mean, this franchise might have fallen on some lean years, but it still has two championship game appearances, one victory. That's more than many other owners, and I would say rather active owners in this league can say. So it's got a lot to be proud for. A lot to be proud for.
All right. Well, I hope you're able to sell it to the lowest bidder. I think that's the only fair outcome there. Turning away from the weakest teams in the league, have you given any consideration to who are some of the stronger teams, or who might be some of the more formidable teams in the league this year, or you don't care since again, you're
I
looking
mean,
for the
look,
lowest
I think
bidder?
I think as in life, it's really important to focus on yourself first. Don't care about others. Run your own race. Uh, that being said, as always, I think Joe has a really strong squad. I mean, that's a franchise. I must say that's got a history of success. Um, I think he's got a good team. I like I like what he's got going on. I mean, certainly with Stroud and Jefferson, Tucker, he's just going to be getting a lot of points. So I like him going the distance. I'm not so sure on Aaron Jones. In Minnesota, I don't have a lot of faith. I mean, obviously they're 3-0. They got a big win over the weekend. So I'm not so sure how much you can rely on the Minnesota run game then for him. But obviously, I think it's a strong team. Uh, Drew has surprised me with the points he's put on the board. I mean,
Well, that's
granted,
all one. That's one you have to understand with Drew. That is one massive week. He went from 84 points week one, 110 week two to 146 last week. So it's you know
I mean,
you got to
it's an
dive into some of
outrageous
the
it's an
analytics.
outrageous day. So I don't necessarily see him going the distance. It just really shocked me. I mean, the points that were put on the board last week. I mean, you always Bodson's had a strong start. Uh, Kyler Murray, I'm sure is going to get injured at some point this season, but you have to like having Henry, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Kelsey will at some point also perform. So I think Bodson, Richmond will have strong seasons. I know you want me to talk about getting Higgy with it. I I kind of refuse to. A, partly based on the name, uh, and B, just in general. I had T Higgins last season. He did a terrible job. I mean, I know you have Jaden Reed, who I guess if he's healthy, you'll play. But yeah, it's a good team. You want all of us to tell you this and bow down to. It's a good team. Uh, who you have when McCaffrey comes back, I think, who else can you plug in? I think is an open question for you. And maybe I guess you play Kittle as your flex. But I think that's kind of
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have four solid receivers. I mean, once Higgins gets up to speed, right now I've got three running backs, but certainly two. I mean, look, I have no idea what McCaffrey's timeline is. If I were Tate, I would have no expectation of when he's coming back. I mean, the idea that he had a setback before week one, they waited, finally put him on IR, so he's out a couple more weeks.
yeah.
He went to Germany to see a specialist. all of that to me screams this is they don't know what the deal is, and it's going to be a while. And there's no incentive for them to rush him back. He's on a big deal. Trent's on a big. I mean, everybody's on a big deal, but Purdy, who will be on a big deal next year. They have not played well so far. If the Niners aren't in contention, I don't see why you would rush McCaffrey back.
If
And
they
even
had
if,
not blown that game on Sunday, they would.
well, the schedule's not. I mean, look, their next couple games are New England, Arizona. I think Seattle's in there. I mean, there's some games that are winnable if they can get Debo and Kittle back. So I don't see that there's a need to rush McCaffrey back, but I don't know that we see him before at least mid-year, just because this calf. First of all, he's on IR, so he's got to miss at least this week, and then no, at least 2 more weeks. I don't think he's definitely back then. So I think you've got at least probably another month, because even once he's healthy, he's going to have to ramp up in terms of practice and game shape. I don't know. I mean, just as a fan, I find it really hard to have any sense of when he'll be back. I don't think we'll see him for a while, and
It's why you
they're
don't
going to keep handing. Look, if they're going to give it to Mason 20 times a game, I have no problem with it. But for me, I mean, I'm not really worried about when that happens. I think injuries happen, trades happen. For all we know, McCaffrey's not going to come back, or he comes back and he looks great, or he's in a timeshare. Who knows? I mean, there's no incentive for them to downplay Mason. Once McCaffrey's back, his ability to spell, McCaffrey, get him the rest he needs, and utilize him in more advantageous situations. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see when that plays out. But in the meantime, I mean, Jonah Love's going to come back. Jada Reed's value is going to pick right back up. I don't have a top tier receiver, but I've got a lot of good options, and certainly, I'm not really worried about my team in terms of overall quality or depth. But you never know. You always got to be out there looking for what's potentially an option, and we'll see. Look, I beat Joe. That was nice. But him and I are out there scoring the most points in the league. That's going to be competitive all season, and we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Now we get out of the division matchups, if you will.
I think you might need to worry about Burrow. I mean, Cincinnati's obviously struggling. I could see him getting injured. I know he's got a
Yeah,
decent
but
record staying healthy, but at some point, the season they're having towards the fantasy playoffs, you might lose Burrow. I would
well,
definitely.
that's why I have Anthony Richardson. I don't. I
mean,
wasn't
yeah.
anticipating.
Talk about a performance of crap that he gave over the weekend. What a terrible. I don't know. I mean, thankfully our viewership is international, or well, no longer international, at least national. Geographically diverse. But over here, where I'm located, I had to watch Colts Bears on Sunday, and boy, howdy, that was an advertisement for some terrible quarterback play. Just atrocious.
I mean, look, I'm not trying to start Anthony Richardson if I don't have to right now, but for me, it's a situation where if he starts to figure out, if they can figure out that offense a little bit better, if they decide to run him more, which I know they don't want to do, but if that's really where his strength is, it really unlocks him as a fantasy option. And I'm okay with that. And I don't mind. I think the Bengals defense is not very good. They're going to be throwing a lot, which that's okay. I'm fine with that in terms of Burrow. But anyway, we have a question from the chat. The chat would like to know, how do you feel about this being your last year in the league? Was this decision made on your behalf or with your blessing? So I guess they're implying there was a gun to your head at some point. But how do you feel about this being your last year? Are you looking for new ownership? Huh?
Who asked this question?
That's from the chat. You gotta participate in the live chat in order to understand.
I didn't know. I don't have a link to the live chat. Well, first off, whoever's hating out in the chat, no decision has been made on the sale of my league, of my team in the league. Now, certainly, I would say this is likely to be my last year of ownership, simply just because logistics mean that I'm focusing much more on my, like Stan Kroenke, my much more successful franchises in football across the Atlantic, where I've had a great deal of success in recent years. So, as an ownership group, my focus is there, like it might be for the Niners and Leeds United later this season as well. But no decision has been made, and no gun was put to my head. It's really just trying to be a responsible owner for the league, for the franchises. I want to respect the owners, the time and effort you've put in to grow, this wonderful establishment. Um, but yeah, no decision yet made.
Well, I mean, I think what I look forward to is, if you were to remain in the league, I think, you got to remember you might be living somewhere where you're so far ahead that you're actually able to watch games in the morning. Like that's
It's very possible.
unique, such a unique advantage, right? You were like fully awake watching Monday Night Football versus the rest of us who are trying to keep our eyes open, watching these terrible games. So, I think there might be some advantages there. You know, you have to
You
think
never,
about that.
you can't rule anything out. But I'm happy that at least for this year of ownership, whether it's my last or not, that I'm able to, properly reconnect with my franchise. As I said, my cross Atlantic pursuits have dominated uh, my attention in recent years, and so I would like to, while my franchise is certainly, and has struggled with my lack of attention. I would like to at least, maybe have a nice run in the consolation bracket this season for old time's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're used to being in the consolation bracket, so it's only fitting that you end up there this year again. The chat would like to know though, um, if you are, when you are posted wherever, whatever black site the federal government decides to send you to, will you be able to watch games before other league members, and will your lineup lock before theirs? I think there's a strategy component to that, pros and cons. The chat is very curious minds, and it takes a beautiful mind to come up with some of these questions. So I don't know if you want to address any of these tinfoil hat theories that are out there.
I mean, I don't know if anyone here in the chat, understands well how time
Time and
zone.
space.
Yeah, exactly. But I will not need to. I will my lineup will set the same time as everyone else's. No, that won't really change. What I think what people don't get from being abroad, or at least when I was on my previous location, is that you're really, at least I was really restricted in what football I could watch. Because basically I only had out access to the 1 p.m. kickoffs. And so it was really hard to get, to follow players to get a sense of what's happening. And then if something took place, an injury or something, you're up in the morning, you're not catching it Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, and it has your attention. It's, you're up Monday morning, you're going to work, and you're kind of completely out of the information flow. And that is where, you know, uh, it'll be nice to do something different or to have
Well, what I think people really want you to do is to straddle the international date line, have one foot in today, one foot in tomorrow or yesterday, depending on which way you want to look at it, and really see how that affects your fantasy outcomes. The other component to this is, you could not to be a marketing show, but you could subscribe to NFL Plus, have access to all 22 film, condensed game footage, and catch up that way, and be able to still obtain all the insights and information you need on your players and your team. So, just one of those thoughts. Again, another suggestion here from the chat, or reading between the lines of the chat, I should say, is you could go be stationed on one of these ocean trawlers out near the international date line that picks up trash in the Pacific. And I don't know if you have internet or Starlink or whatever, but it could be a huge advantage for waivers if you're doing that a day ahead or a day behind. How that all plays out. I mean, there's many different avenues for this, but we'll move past the time space continuum. We
Yeah,
don't want to
let's
get too
let's
far
not
down that
spread,
rabbit hole.
conspiracy theories. Let's protect and let's speak positively on the technological integrity of the flea flicker system, that it's not getting manipulated by space and time.
All right, well, let's look ahead to this weekend then. So this week, I don't know if you've looked at the matchups. I certainly haven't taken a deep look, but you play Drew. Do you think you're going to win? We'll start there.
So let me be very clear here. This is absolutely the first time I'm looking at this week's matchup. So I need to uh, I need to assess that in some detail. So let me pull it up here on my screen. Well, right now Flea Flicker is telling me that I'm an 11-point underdog. So that's never ideal. Looking at these matchups, he's got Dak against the Giants, and as bad as Dak is, and let me be very clear, he's terrible. Um, the Giants are even worse. So he's going to have a big day. I don't think Jonathan Taylor will put up 15 against the Pittsburgh defense, and Stevenson getting 12 against the Niners is generous. That being said, Neighbors, probably Metcalf and Dak will all have big days. On my side, you know, Ayuk's just not getting it done, and Pickens has been terrible. I'll probably need to switch Coleman out. I don't have much else going on unless I pick something off waivers. So no, I don't think I will win, but it's going to be a lot closer than this because I don't see Drew getting 110 points, but I also don't see
What I
myself.
like about this matchup is Drew has 4 players tomorrow night. So you'll know after Thursday night football whether you got a shot or not. Either Dak, Jake Ferguson, Neighbors, Devin Singletary, some combination of them goes off, or it's one of these games like last year where the Cowboys get up really big early on some defensive and special team scores, and all of a sudden Dak's not throwing and they're running the ball. Um, yeah, you'll know come Friday what this matchup really looks like. I agree with you. I think there's some tough matchups there across the board, really. I mean, I think for different reasons. Um,
I don't
we'll
necessarily
see.
know if I agree with that assessment because I think Drew's big scores are all going to be tomorrow night's game. I think Dak and Neighbors and probably Ferguson are his big scores. I don't expect Singletary to have that great of a game, but I think those are his big scores for the week. Like Dak is going to have 25 points against the Giants. The Giants are terrible.
Well, but
Um,
I think it depends. Look, they beat him 40-0 last year, and I don't recall Dak going off in that game. So it just sort of depends on game script how that goes down. So we'll have to see. Should be interesting. I don't know if you've looked at any of the other matchups. I'm just excited to see if Paul can eclipse his average score of like 60 something points. If he can break 70, it would be a monumental outcome for Paul. Obviously, he's going against Joe, so the odds are pretty low there. Anyway, we've got a nice competitive matchup between this angelic bunghole and
we do.
Reshi's drag drag race. That ought to be an interesting matchup. Bodson and I should be in a competitive one as well. You have to see it. It doesn't look like Manny's going to put up much fight against LaMagna.
No.
And then Wagner and Jacobs. That's a solid little matchup there. And again, the Chiefs play the Chargers, so might not be a lot for Mahomes to do, depending on if Herbert doesn't play and it's Taylor Heineke, quarterback for the Chargers. I can't imagine Kansas City struggles that much with that. So that'd be an easy one for Mahomes, where that limits his output for Wagner and keeps that one a little more competitive. We'll have to wait and find out, of course.
Yeah, I mean, whew. I mean, of all of these, Justin against Tates is probably the most interesting matchup, just because also the games that have going on. I mean, a lot of Tates has a few players playing each other, like within his own team. I think it's just an interesting week. I mean, Paul, God bless him, going against Joe this week, it's not going to go his way. Um, but yeah, you and Bodson, that would be interesting. I think Flea Flicker is a bit harsh on Bodson. I mean, his projected points is looking like mine, and I just don't think that's accurate. Um, but no, that should be probably the matchup to watch. Certainly, for playoff perspective, that's the matchup to watch. Um, you know, where at least where we are right now in the season.
Well, it's early in the year. A lot can happen. I think, Bonds has got an interesting team. Um, given he's got both Amon Ra and Jamison Williams. I think that's really interesting to try to like stack that. I know LaMagna has both Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. You know, those are big risks playing both of them. It's hard because if you only play one and you play the wrong one, you're really kind of playing roulette. And if you play both, depending on what the rest of your lineup does, I mean, you really can hamper yourself because you're depending on those offenses to produce at high levels and to spread it around through the air, which they very well may do on a consistent basis, but that is a little tricky. So I don't know. I mean, this week we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
For Bodson, Detroit, naturally, they're going against Seattle Monday night in Detroit in a dome, so that certainly favors Goff. But Seattle's not exactly a pushover, right now. They've got a new coach, first year coach. Defense is pretty deep, is pretty decent. But Bodson's got three guys, well, four of his players on Monday Night Football, and he's got a Sunday night. So for Bodson, no matter what I do, I'm done Sunday afternoon basically. Besides one guy Sunday night, I need to post a pretty high, pretty big lead, I would think, because of Bodson's opportunity. If the Lions and the Seahawks get in a shootout, that favors Bodson. Of course, Achan, you never know, with his speed and athleticism, and the Dolphins are playing Tennessee. Will Levis could have a couple of terrible picks or terrible plays and really help the Dolphins there. So I've got to post a pretty good number at the end of Sunday, I think, to have a shot there. But should be interesting, just kind of how the sequencing of that will play itself out.
Just,
So anyway, I
just
mean, it's
in case, just sorry, just to flag in case anyone from the Bodson franchise or family happens to watch the pod, please select a kicker. If you lose to Lowell because you don't have a kicker in your lineup, I think ownership in week 4 of the season, I think ownership would be relatively disappointed. And we would like to see you get this win. I know the league is all rooting for you, Eric. So please put a kicker in the lineup.
Bodson doesn't have a kicker on his team, so he's going to have to drop somebody to make a move. He's carrying 3 tight ends. I think at one point he had 4 quarterbacks. So, look, his roster construction is always
Experimentation of the roster
interesting.
is fine, but I just don't want to see a loss in a close week because you don't want to have a kicker.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, right? I think that's kind of the beauty of it, if you will. So, look, you've made a pod debut. I know you've great things are in store for your franchise under new ownership to come down the road. But any parting thoughts here as we wrap this up? As it's getting a little late here on a Wednesday evening. Some of us are tracking, you know, tropical systems in the Gulf of Mexico. Just curious how you
Well,
what your parting words of wisdom may be.
I'm a little disappointed that we did not discuss sports betting at all during my time in the pod.
I mean, we can if you have some fantastic parlay you'd like to share with everybody. I'm sure people are welcome to hear that. But
Well, what I
considering
will say
you're
is,
upset.
Brandon Ayuk cost me big money last weekend. I had a wonderful parlay with Marvin Harrison Jr., Saquon Barkley, Ayuk, and Jamar Chase all scoring a touchdown. And of course, Ayuk had to let me down on that one. I would say one of the great joys of this owner being back in America is the plethora of gambling options. Big shout out to our fellow owner Matt LaMagna for setting me up for some free money from a wonderful sports book and giving me some suggestions on how to spend my Sunday in that forum. I also want to send a quick shout out, parting words to Joe Richmond while his wonderful fantasy franchise is going from strength to strength. His Arsenal team absolutely gave away the league last Sunday at the Etihad. That has to hurt, Joe. I just want to let you know we feel it for you. We hear you. Um, no, that's it for me. Just had to give those two shout outs to fellow longtime owners here in the league, and hopefully to see all East Coast ownership groups here. Hopefully in the next few weeks. Matt, Paul, Manny, let's get in touch. So thank you, Commissioner, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak to my fellow owners and air my grievances about my team and other topics.
All right. Well, we appreciate your appearance here, and we look forward to you joining us again from a different black site, next season. So if you're still in the league, of course, if you're not in the league, then no invitations will be extended. So